The sky was changing. Clouds boiled with the strange glow of a fading paradise, and a wind, unlike any earthly wind, swept through the lush garden. At its center, a man and a woman stood trembling, their faces marked by both wonder and terror. Behind them, the world still shimmered in hues no mortal eye would ever see again. Rivers like liquid crystal, trees heavy with impossible fruit, and the gentle hum of creation in perfect harmony. But ahead, the ground turned harsh, dry, and wild. Two mighty figures loomed at the boundary, not guards of mortal flesh, but beings of light and fire. Their swords flickered like living flame, weaving back and forth in an eternal warning. This was the moment humanity's first home was lost. Not merely a home, but something deeper, a way of life, a relationship with the Creator, and a place where heaven and earth had once touched. The gates to Eden were closing forever before its loss. The Garden of Eden was unlike any landscape that would follow. The book of Genesis describes it not as a vague wilderness, but as a deliberate design, a sacred space planted by God Himself. 4 rivers flowed outward from its center: the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. Each carried with it life, nourishment, and treasures: gold, onyx, and precious stones, woven naturally into the soil as if the earth itself had been dressed in finery. The ancient Hebrew text paints Eden as more than a garden. It was a mikdash, a sanctuary. In Jewish tradition, it is sometimes seen as the first temple, where Adam served as priest over creation, walking with God in the cool of the day. Here, there was no barrier between the divine and the human. Every leaf, every bird call, every breath was filled with the direct presence of the Creator. In this place, there was no death, no hunger, no fear. The animals knew no violence. Humanity's role was not survival, but stewardship, to tend, to name, to cultivate. It was a realm untouched by corruption, but it would not last. At the heart of Eden stood 2 trees unlike any others. The tree of life granted eternal vitality. Its fruit was the sustenance of immortality, the means by which Adam and Eve would have lived forever in God's presence. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, however, stood as a boundary, a divine command given form. Ancient rabbis debated its nature. Some saw its fruit as symbolic, others as a literal source of moral awakening. To know good and evil was to take on the role of moral authority, to judge, to define, to act apart from God's guidance. The prohibition was not about denying knowledge, but about protecting harmony. Yet the 2 trees existed side by side, a constant choice before humanity: life sustained by obedience, or separation fed by defiance. And into this balance stepped another presence. The serpent in Eden was unlike any serpent known today. In ancient Mesopotamian cultures, serpents often symbolized wisdom, immortality, and even chaos. In the biblical account, this creature was Arum, cunning, subtle, deliberate. Later scripture identifies the serpent with Satan, the adversary. But in this moment, it was a voice challenging the order of creation. Did God really say? The words were simple, but they cracked open doubt in Eve's mind. The offer was not one of open rebellion, but of curiosity, empowerment, and a promise. You will be like God. The fruit glistened. Whether in natural beauty or supernatural allure, the text does not say. But in taking and eating, Eve and then Adam did more than break a rule. They shifted the foundation of humanity's relationship with the divine. They seized autonomy, the right to decide their own truth. And in doing so, they fractured the unity between Creator and creation. The moment they ate, their eyes were opened, but the sight they gained was not the godlike vision they had imagined. Instead, they saw themselves, vulnerable, exposed, incomplete. Shame was born in that instant, a feeling unknown in Eden until now. They tried to cover themselves with fig leaves, crude barriers against the raw awareness of their own nakedness. It was more than physical exposure. It was the knowledge that something inside had changed. The harmony of trust was gone, replaced by fear and concealment. When the voice of God walked in the garden, they hid. It was the first time a human being ever hid from the one who had formed them. The rupture was complete. God's words fell like a verdict over creation itself. The serpent was cursed to crawl and eat dust. Its former form, perhaps upright and more glorious, stripped away. Enmity would forever exist between the serpent's offspring and the woman's. In this, early Christians saw a prophecy that one day a descendant of the woman would crush the serpent's head. Eve's path would now be marked by pain in childbirth and the struggle for harmony in marriage. Adam would toil against the ground, now cursed to yield only through sweat and struggle. The earth itself bore the consequence, infected by the rebellion. Thorns and thistles would rise where once only beauty had grown. But perhaps the deepest wound was exile. Humanity could no longer remain in Eden, for to eat from the tree of life now, in a fallen state, would make deathless corruption eternal. It is one of the most striking images in all of Scripture. The cherubim standing at the east of the garden, their flaming swords turning every way. In ancient Near Eastern thought, cherubim were not the soft, winged figures of Renaissance art, but mighty, hybrid guardians, beings of immense strength and authority. Their presence marked Eden not just as lost land, but as holy territory, the throne room of God on earth, sealed away. The fire of their swords was the fire of divine presence, the same fire that would later descend on Mount Sinai and fill the temple in Jerusalem. For Adam and Eve, this sight was final. Eden would remain behind them, unreachable, its rivers and trees fading into legend. Though the biblical narrative moves forward, the memory of Eden lingered in ancient cultures. In Jewish tradition, Eden was sometimes envisioned as existing in a higher realm, a paradise that could one day be restored. In Christian thought, it became linked with the New Jerusalem, a perfected city where the tree of life would appear once again, as described in the book of Revelation. Other ancient cultures held their own echoes of the story. The Sumerian Dilmun, a pure land without sickness or death. The Mesopotamian accounts of gardens belonging to the gods. Even the Greek idea of the Elysian fields. Each reflected a longing for an untouched world, a place before corruption. The Garden of Eden was not merely an ancient tale. It became the archetype of paradise itself. When Eden closed, humanity did not just lose a home. They lost unbroken fellowship with their Creator, a life where work was joy, where every need was met without exploitation, where time itself was untainted by decay. They lost access to the tree of life, cutting off the path to immortality. In its place came the slow march of death, not as instant punishment, but as the inevitable shadow now cast over human days. They lost a creation in which every creature knew peace. After the fall, animals would prey on each other. Nature itself would rage, storms, droughts, and famine emerging where once there had been perfect balance. And they lost the direct presence of God walking beside them. In the centuries to come, glimpses of His presence would appear in burning bushes, in the Ark of the Covenant, in the temple, but Eden's daily intimacy was gone. This loss became the deep undertone of all human history. The prophets spoke of a coming restoration. Isaiah described a future where the wolf would dwell with the lamb, the desert would bloom, and death would be swallowed forever. Ezekiel's vision of a temple with a river flowing out to heal the nations echoed Eden's 4 rivers. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul spoke of creation itself groaning, waiting for the day it would be set free from corruption. And in the final pages of Revelation, the promise emerges. The tree of life will stand again, its leaves for the healing of the nations, its fruit given freely to those redeemed. Eden, it seems, is not gone forever, but awaits at the other end of history's arc. Many have tried to locate Eden in the physical world. The mention of the Tigris and Euphrates suggests Mesopotamia, modern Iraq, while the Pishon and Gihon have sparked endless theories. Some place them in Arabia, others in Africa, and some see them as symbolic, representing the 4 corners of the earth. Ancient Jewish mysticism sometimes described Eden as existing in a dimension beyond ordinary space, hidden until the end of days. Christian theologians debated whether its rivers once flowed on earth and were later altered by the flood of Noah. Whether hidden in time, lost beneath the earth, or existing in another plane, Eden's geography has remained an unsolved mystery, perhaps by divine design. The story of Eden is not simply about how humanity fell. It is about what humanity was meant to be. In the perfection of that garden, we see the Creator's original intent, a world without fear, division, or death. Its loss explains the deep ache in human hearts for a better world, the reason every culture dreams of paradise. Though the gates remain guarded, the story ends not in eternal exile, but in a promise. One day the river will flow again. The tree of life will bear fruit once more, and the voice that once walked in the cool of the day will call his people home. Until then, Eden lives on, in Scripture, in hope, and in the human longing for the place where heaven and earth were once the same. You've just uncovered another hidden chapter of history with animated Bible mysteries. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story where the Bible's words, ancient legends, and divine mysteries come together. Until next time, heaven holds the secrets. Never stop searching.